Hello guys, welcome back to LR Anime. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of BTTH Rebirth of Emperor Yang episode number 88 based on novel. So let's start. The earth-shaking roar spread endlessly between heaven and earth, and everyone's head felt a buzzing and explosion. Even the strong half-emperor had a dignified face and turned white, not to mention those with strength below the half-emperor, who had already been injured and fell to the ground. Roar. In the sky, Xiao Yang's face changed instantly when he heard the shocking dragon roar. When he raised his eyes and looked at the sword dragon, his huge dragon claws condensed by countless long swords were now hitting Xiao Jin's dragon claws. The clang and harsh sound continued to spread, and sparks splashed everywhere. Xiao Jin. Xiao Yang's eyes were frozen. He wanted to make the last fight, but he didn't expect that Xiao Jin would resist in the end. Chong. 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 The fierce collision was endless, just like the sparks of stars, which were splashed down like a rain of fire. Xiao Jin's huge body twisted and collided violently with the Stegosaurus in front of him. His already scarred body was covered with sword marks in the process of collision with the Stegosaurus. Pieces of golden and dim dragon scales fell from the young gold body, and the blood poured out. The bright red blood with some temperature faintly floated and fell on Xiao Yang's face. The thick bloody smell brought by the blood made Xiao Yang's face gradually gloomy. At the same time, the weak palm under the sleeve robe was clenched again. Xiao Yang's mind moved. Bei Wang's body shot out like a shell and stepped on the void. He immediately came to the belly of the sword dragon. With an iron fist, he smashed many of the long swords on the dragon. Bei Wang, who had just recovered his wounds, bombarded the Stegosaurus in front of him with all his strength. Although he tried his best, the huge gap in strength made all these actions look like a drop in the bucket. Without a strong bombardment, it was difficult to break the Stegosaurus. Boy, if you want to break the sword dragon, attack its head. There is the core of the sword dragon controlled by the fighting emperor. If you break there, the sword dragon will be destroyed. When Xiao Yang had nothing to do, the voice of Ji Yu in his body finally came out. As soon as he opened his mouth, he told Xiao Yang the weakness of the sword dragon. Xiao Yang nodded secretly, raised his eyes and looked at the next moment of the sword dragon. Xiao Yang couldn't help sinking slightly at the bottom of his heart. Although the top of the sword dragon's head was its weakness, it was also the place where the sword dragon guarded the most closely. There, whether Xiao Yang attacks from any other direction, he will be noticed by the sword dragon. In addition, with the control of Jianming, it is impossible to break the sword dragon. Thinking of this, Xiao Yang suddenly felt a little heavy, but at the same time, he also knew the situation he was facing at the moment. If he wanted to break the sword dragon, he had to choose this way. Otherwise, if he continued like this, not only would he have an accident, but I'm afraid even Xiao Jin would be involved. Anyway, try to fight with all your strength. Xiao Yang's eyes were sharp and stared at the huge Stegosaurus in front of him. Between the rolling of his throat, 2 imperial pills were swallowed into his stomach. With the diffusion of the medicine, a thick breath condensed rapidly in Xiao Yang's body. Below, Jianming saw this sudden change in the sky, but she couldn't help but utter a cold hum. Her heart moved. The momentum of the Jianlong who was touching Xiao Jin suddenly soared. The battle situation in the field, which was originally regarded as a balance, was broken at this moment. The sword dragon roared. Countless swords on the huge dragon's claws shot out, and sharp sword light was emitted from all over the body. It was mercilessly waved and cut on Xiao Jin. At that time, Xiao Jin, who was facing the enemy, was inevitably cut up and down by the sword light. The shallow or deep sword marks rained on Xiao Jin's body, dripping with blood. Even between the broken flesh and blood, he could vaguely see the thick white bones under it, while Xiao Jin kept roaring in his mouth and still resisted the Stegosaurus in front of him, lest those swords hurt Xiao Yang. Jianming. But they all said that only 20% of the power is needed. You really didn't pay attention to the leader of this pavilion by doing so. Seeing this scene, Luo Jin shouted angrily. He regards Xiao Yang as a friend, and Xiao Jin has a close relationship with Xiao Yang. Naturally, he will not sit idly by and let Jianming hurt Xiao Jin. Ha ha, the pavilion leader joked. We just said that when facing Xiao Yang, we only use 20% of our strength, but we didn't say that we would show mercy to this beast and kill it without a blow. It's already kind and soft-hearted. You. Luo Jin was furious, but he was speechless. He had to turn his body and fight in his body. He wanted to fly to help Xiao Jin. Hehe, I think you'd better stay here. If you move, just wave your fingers. Before you fly up, the The beast and Xiao Yang are afraid to go to the Yellow Spring together. Jianming, how dare you threaten our pavilion leader? When he heard the cold laughter of Jianming, Luo Jin finally couldn't help it. He drank fiercely in his mouth, waved his big hand, brushed the jade fan in his hand, and immediately launched a fight against Jianming. He defused Luo Jin's attack. Jianming grabbed a joking smile at the corners of her mouth, looked at Luo Jin with a plain smile and said, "Why should you be angry? I just hope not to hurt you by mistake. After all, the purpose of our trip is only for Xiao Yang, which has nothing to do with Union Pavilion. We are really sorry for hurting the elders of your pavilion by mistake, but we still ask you to give in on Xiao Yang." For Jianming, the reason why he is afraid of Union Pavilion is just because of the forces behind Union Pavilion. Now Luo Jin is alone without the support of the person behind him. He is just an ordinary 8-star and half emperor and 1.5 emperor. In Jianming's opinion, if he really wants to kill, it's just a matter of one thought. It's not a way at all. The master of this pavilion still said that if Xiao Yang had something to do today, the four of you, together with your sect, must also disappear. Luo Jin's chest fluctuated violently and roared at Jianming. Jianming frowned. No matter what, he was also afraid of Luo Jin's threat. The others frowned again, but when they looked at Xiao Yang, they couldn't help thinking of Tianjue Step. This is a great opportunity related to Tianjue Ancient Tomb. No matter what, they can't let it go easily. In the sky, the crimson blood poured continuously, completely dyed Xiao Yang behind Xiao Jin into a bloodman, and the roar gradually weakened into a hoarse roar. The roar was deeply unwilling and painful, but even so, Xiao Jin still insisted in pain. No matter how, it would block these sharp swords that wanted to hurt Xiao Yang with its own body. Countless sharp blades pierced Xiao Jin's body. The scarlet flesh and blood were cut open. The blood flew everywhere and the flesh and blood were separated. The dark white bones reflected the cold luster, which made people feel even colder. You can't kill Xiao Yang today, and you can't let him leave Lungsue City intact. You can't kill. Then I'll break your arm. Gaga, gaga. Jianming's face was gloomy and fierce, and she sneered in her heart. They raised their eyes and looked at the battle circle in the sky. When they saw the scene in their eyes for the first time, everyone couldn't help but take a breath, and there was a chill in their hearts. Under the jagged sword light, Xiao Jin has reached the point where the oil is exhausted and the lamp is dry. In this way, he tries harder to keep the sword dragon in front of him and block all his sword light on himself. As a result, pieces of meat mixed with broken bones, Xiao Jin's body was constantly hit and flew, with part of the sword light, which had been able to penetrate Xiao Jin's body, and even nearly hurt Xiao Yang, which made Xiao Jin work hard to keep Xiao Yang safe. The Jianming people below looked at Xiao Yang, who stood still behind Xiao Jin with envy. Even they couldn't help being moved by Xiao Jin's actions. People who can really sacrifice their lives for themselves will not get it in their life. This beast is really loyal, but it's a pity that even if you are loyal, you will be in vain in front of reality. But then, the corners of Jianming's mouth aroused a ferocious smile, and the dry palms slowly lifted up from under the sleeve robe. At the moment when the ferocious smile fell in his mouth, he held them together fiercely. Since you are so desperate to protect Xiao Yang, then you should die first. With a yin smile, Jianming's heart moved. The sword dragon in the sky suddenly roared up to the sky and made a strong sword sound. Then the huge body suddenly shook. The dragon claws forcibly broke out of Xiao Jin's bondage. The long sword solidified. The huge dragon claws were raised high and chopped down at Xiao Jin's head. Luo Jin at the bottom saw this. Although he wanted to do it, in the end, he still lowered his head with a gloomy face and gave a heavy sigh in his mouth. At this moment, once he makes a move, he will be blocked by Chen Zhen and others, which will make the current situation more and more chaotic. Once that time comes, I'm afraid even with the cloud-hidden pavilion in front, Xiao Yang is afraid it will be difficult to survive. At this moment, for the sake of Xiao Yang, even if Luo Jin is unwilling to do so, he can only watch. Little Master. Zhong Yi's voice sounded in Luo Jin's ear. Luo Jin also came back to his mind. Beside him, there was the strong man fighting the emperor. Unfortunately, at this time, everything was late. Xiao Jin, it was too late to save. Alas. Anyway, I must keep brother Xiao Yang and Xiao Jin. I can only make amends in the future. As for the four main doors, I will make them pay the price after today. Luo Jin's face was low and his head was buried deep. No, young lord, what I mean is that Xiao Yang's little friend seems to have something wrong. Zhong Yi's voice didn't fall, but Luo Jin's eyes suddenly coagulated. He raised his eyes and stared at Xiao Yang standing motionless in the sky. At this time, the latter still stood motionless in the void. The tragic situation in front of him seemed to have nothing to do with him. His eyes were closed and his face was calm. Seeing this scene, Luo Jin couldn't help but frown slightly. With Xiao Yang's feelings for Xiao Jin, if the latter has something to do, Xiao Yang can't ignore it at the moment. No matter what situation, Xiao Yang will never let Xiao Jin live or die. But in that case, what's the matter with this picture at this time? Immediately after that, when Luo Jin explored Xiao Yang's breath, the look on his face immediately changed dramatically, because with his strength, at the moment, he couldn't find out what Xiao Yang's specific breath was. What's going on? The next moment, when the huge dragon claw in the sky chopped down Xiao Jin's head, Xiao Yang, who had been silent, finally opened his eyes at this moment. At this moment, the golden light burst and the strange fire spread all over the world. With Xiao Yang as the center, it quickly swept across the sky. Diamond glass body. Diamond glass body. With a roar full of rage coming from Xiao Yang's mouth, suddenly, a dazzling golden light burst out on Xiao Yang. Xiao Yang's body grew rapidly under the cover of the golden light. In an instant, it had turned into a King Kong giant as high as 9 feet and 9 feet. Such a huge body is like a giant god between heaven and earth, but it is much shorter than the Stegosaurus in front of it at the moment. However, this did not affect the shock brought to the public after the outbreak of Xiao Yang's Vajra glass. Drink. A roar of anger spread like 9 days of thunder. Everyone's head couldn't help feeling a buzzing at the moment. Even the Jianming people below couldn't help their eyes. They couldn't figure out how Xiao Yang, who had a weak breath 1 moment ago, seemed to be a different person the next moment. Bang! The soles of the Vajra giant feet transformed by Xiao Yang severely trampled on the void. At the moment of a violent bang like a heavy thunder, Xiao Yang's body suddenly appeared on Xiao Jin's side. Although the body shape is relatively small, only a small half of Xiao Jin and the sword dragon, that's it. At this moment, when the giant god stood here, the people couldn't help holding their breath. They felt that the heaven and earth seemed to be trembling slightly. Hum. With Xiao Yang's nose humming, the people present could clearly see that the void in front of Xiao Yang was slightly distorted. Roar. When the sword dragon's huge claw was about to fall on Xiao Jin's head, Xiao Yang finally moved again. A big mouth, a dark white flame beam burst out in time, and then annihilated the whole dragon arm of the sword dragon in the eyes of countless people below. How is this possible? No, the boy's strange fire is strange. We can't let him go today. If he doesn't die today, it's equivalent to letting the tiger go back to the mountain. At this moment, even Jianming, Chen Zhen and Wu Jitian, who were watching all this, couldn't help feeling shocked by the scene in front of them. No matter why Xiao Yang became so strong, the scene he showed at the moment could not be underestimated by them. In a short moment, they recovered from the end of the crossbow to the peak. This terrible recovery speed, whether because of secret methods or other reasons, can't be underestimated by them. Now Xiao Yang's strength is only 5-star and half emperor. If he is only half emperor, it's okay. But the most important thing is that he is still young. It's hard to imagine how powerful he will be in the future. It's a long night's dream. Today, no matter what, we can't let Xiao Yang go. Since it has taken root, we must never let it bear fruit again. We must uproot all the evil consequences and eliminate future troubles forever. Sword dragon, kill, roar. Jianming's face suddenly turned violent. With a wave of his big hand, the sword dragon in the sky suddenly turned around, while Xiao Jin was unwilling to hold the former. He let his flesh and blood be torn off, but he also tried to control the sword dragon in his arms. For Xiao Jin, Xiao Yang is heaven. Take your life to protect your own sky. Wheezing. Seeing Xiao Jin, who was constantly injured and on the verge of life and death, Xiao Yang's golden eyes quickly poured a touch of scarlet color, and his breath became more and more urgent and heavy. The huge golden palm was clenched, and the emptiness in the palm was crushed by violence. Xiao Yang stared angrily, turned around in Xiao Jin's arms and faced his sword dragon. His whole body lit up a forest white horror at the moment. Roar! The sword dragon had a big mouth. The roar in his mouth had just escaped and had not spread. Xiao Yang hit the sword dragon's mouth with a fierce fist. Then, in the shocked eyes of countless people below, he leaned forward and stepped forward. At the same time, the right fist that hit the sword dragon's mouth suddenly used force again. Unexpectedly, he hit the whole right arm into the sword dragon's mouth, through the whole head. At the same time, under the burning of Senbai fire, the head of Stegosaurus was quickly melted into a big hole. Hum! When the stegosaurus was broken, the sword T below couldn't help but make a dull hum. The manipulation of the stegosaurus mainly depended on his soul power. At the moment, when the stegosaurus was broken, his soul was affected. Although it didn't matter, it was a great humiliation to him, the 8-star duty. However, at the moment when Jianming looked up again, the look on his angry face changed suddenly. When he stepped back, the 2 fingers of his right hand closed together and turned into sword fingers, and then he cut himself fiercely. With Jianming's understanding of kendo, he can turn the sword anywhere in his body. A move in his heart is the meaning of the sword. His whole body is protected by the sword chi. Even a blow in a hurry can't be underestimated. At the next moment, a powerful and terrible sword suddenly shot and cut off the dragon's body, but the sword did not reduce its momentum. Finally, it blasted with Xiao Yang's golden iron fist in the sky. Bang! The light of the sword dispersed, and Xiao Yang's body flew upside down. When he stopped, a scarlet sword scar was tearing from his fingers to his arms on his golden body. In the face of Jianming's sword, even if Xiao Yang tries hard, the gap in strength still makes it difficult for him to fight back. Fighting the emperor is too powerful. Xiao Jin. Until this moment, Xiao Yang just hugged Xiao Jin covered with scars. Looking at Xiao Jin, who was dying in his arms and in a miserable state, Xiao Yang was more angry. When the heart was moved, the 3,000 yang flames in the body burst out quickly, wrapped Xiao Jin's body, gradually narrowed down, and then was absorbed into the body by Xiao Yang. Who? With a long sigh of relief, Xiao Yang turned slowly with calm eyes, but his heart was full of anger. Kill. A hoarse cold cry came out, which was as low as from the abyss. Xiao Yang suddenly clenched his fists, moved his feet, and showed his Chenjua step in an instant. In an instant, he had come to Jianming's side, waved his huge fist, and hit Jianming's head with one punch. Now Xiao Yang's anger is full of his chest. How can Jiyu Tianzibu be exposed? He only knows that Jianming hurt Xiao Jin, so he must pay a price for it. Quack, quack, quack. Xiao Yang, can't you resist being exposed at last? Tianjueba is on you. Jianming recognized Xiao Yang when she saw him show his unique step. She couldn't help laughing. But Xiao Yang didn't hear it at this time. With the sound of drinking in his mouth, his powerful iron fist was also smashed down. Die. Die. The terrible fist beat on Jianming's face, which not only brought bursts of stinging pain, but also made him feel suffocated. However, in the face of Xiao Yang's all-out blow, Jianming's face seemed very calm. Even though the huge golden fist had covered all his eyes, Jianming was still indifferent. Bang! The next moment, accompanied by a clear and stuffy sound, the golden giant fist, which was several circles larger than Jianming's whole person, finally stopped at a distance of several inches from Jianming's face. Regardless of how Xiao Yang tried his best, his iron fist could not move forward anymore. What? Seeing this scene, Xiao Yang was suddenly surprised. He didn't expect that with his best shot, he would not even touch Jianming's body in the end. We can see the horror of fighting the emperor and the strong. Gaga, gaga. Boy, your courage is commendable, but you look up to yourself too much. With your little half-emperor, do you think you still have a chance to hurt me? It's ridiculous, gaga, gaga. Seeing the look on Xiao Yang's face, Jianming couldn't help laughing. Then a grim smile arose from the corners of her mouth and said with a fierce smile, "Even the emperor's protective sword gang can't be broken. Why do you say to kill me? Is it just your mouth? Gaga, gaga. If you don't try, how do you know if you can break it?" Xiao Yang's face was solemn and cold, and then he waved his big hand. The forest white strange fire burst out from all over his body, turned into a line of fire, and quickly wrapped the sword T in front of him. When the strange fire burst out, the temperature between heaven and earth suddenly increased. The originally neutral air suddenly became dry, making everyone in the cities breathing a little dry. This strange fire is a little different from other strange fires on him. Wu Jitian frowned, reached out and grabbed the air in front of him, felt the hot temperature in the air, and couldn't help but spit out. Indeed, the boy is really strange. Looking at the power of his bone spirit cold fire, it is obviously not the Numenon, but it is much stronger than other subfires. Chen Zhen nodded slightly when he heard the speech. With his soul power, the result of the exploration was obviously that it was much clearer to compete with the extreme sky, but he couldn't tell why the bone spirit cold fire was different. Hehe, the most elusive thing about this little friend is how his strange fire is integrated. Although I have heard of some skills that can integrate 2 or 3 kinds of strange fire together, I almost integrate all kinds of strange fire like this, which is too rebellious. Yi Luotian's eyes narrowed, his deep eyes stared at the bone spirit cold fire on Xiao Yang, stroking his white beard with one hand and bearing it behind him with the other, and smiled. On the other side, the forest white strange fire wrapped Jianming, making it look like a fire cocoon from the outside. Although it has Zhengang protection, the terrible high temperature of bone spirit cold fire still makes Jianming feel bad even across Zhengang. Moreover, under the constant burning of different fire, Jianming also clearly realized that his body protecting sword gang was being burned and devoured. The terror of different fire was enough to break his body protecting sword gang in a moment. And Xiao Yang also took advantage of this opportunity. His huge body suddenly danced, and one punch hit the sword gang wrapped by different fire. Bang! One punch fell, and Jianming's body wrapped by different fire flew out like a football, while Xiao Yang took a step and took Chenju a step again. In a flash, he had climbed over Jianming's head, turned like a hill, and a whip leg fell on the Zhengang from top to bottom. Boom! With a loud bang, Jianming's body fell into the city below like a shell, raising a cloud of dust. Drink! Xiao Yang roared up to the sky, moved again, and instantly fell into the city below. Bang! 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 100 heavy hammers, but the sword gang shield around Jianming's body is still alive. Drink! When Xiao Yang blows out a punch again, a fierce sword light suddenly shoots out from the thin fire. The sword finger is Xiao Yang. Xiao Yang's golden giant's eyes coagulated and his body turned around. He unexpectedly avoided the sword. At the same time, his idle left hand suddenly clenched into a fist and hit Jianming hard. Bang! Heh! Different from before, this time, Xiao Yang's huge fist was blocked by an arm as thin as chopsticks. It was Jianming. Xiao Yang, the Emperor gave you 500 moves. Unfortunately, you failed to break the Emperor's protective sword gang after all. You let the Emperor lose. Roar! Jianming's voice did not fall, but Xiao Yang suddenly stretched out the palm of his right hand, like grasping a loach. He held Jianming in the palm of his hand. 8-pole collapse. The roar like thunder spread, and the terrible momentum condensed into an invisible storm, which washed away the gravel and dust within 100 feet around Xiao Yang. At the same time, Xiao Yang also raised his right fist holding Jianming tightly. When the latter regained consciousness, he hit the huge pit in front of him with a fierce fist. As the sound of drinking fell, when Jianming came back to his senses, Xiao Yang had already punched dozens of punches one after another. Bang! Once again, the bombardment in Xiao Yang's hand was blocked by Jianming again. Jianming stops Xiao Yang's bombardment with one hand. She looks at the broken Zhengang wrapped around her body. She can't help feeling shocked by Xiao Yang's violence in her heart. Only with his flesh and blood, such a terrible bombardment broke out, which almost smashed his protective sword gang. In his cognition, I'm afraid no one can compare with it except Wu Zetian. Xiao Yang, you really impress the Emperor. 8-pole collapse. Bang! Xiao Yang's attack was again stopped by Jianming, who snorted coldly and said with a fierce smile. Why, with the first time, do you expect to have the second time? Bang! Although Jianming's heart was filled with disdain and ridicule, once again, when his voice was about to come out, Xiao Yang kicked him hard. This time, not only Jianming was blown away, but also the bodyguard Zhengang around him was finally broken. Seeing this scene, not only the onlookers, but also Wu Zetian and others in the distance could not help feeling a sense of surprise. Jianming expected that Xiao Yang would use his fists, but he seemed to forget that he also had a pair of more powerful legs and feet. This time, Jianming really thinks highly of himself and has great trust. Otherwise, with his strength to fight the Emperor, how can Xiao Yang make him suffer losses again and again? It is because Jianming despises his enemies that he will continue to lose in Xiao Yang's hands. In the final analysis, he asked for it. Bastard! Do you really think you can compete with the Emperor? This foot broke Jianming's protective body, and Zhengang also seemed to wake him up completely. Finally, a long suppressed smell of terror swept quickly in all directions with Jianming's body as the center when Jianming got up intact. While his voice fell, 4 Lingtian giant swords quickly rose around Xiao Yang's body and surrounded Xiao Yang. Surrounded by walls, Xiao Yang raised his eyes and looked at the sky above. There was his only way out at the moment. Xiao Yang's steps are slightly arched, and he wants to jump out of the cage. You want to hide? It's not that easy. Seeing through Xiao Yang's intention for a long time, Jianming snorted coldly and changed the formula in his hand. At the exit above Xiao Yang's head, there is another huge sword that condenses quickly. When Jianming gives an order, he will cut off Xiao Yang below. The 6th move, Sword Seal. Under the order, the mighty sword idea spread like a wave. The 4 huge swords surrounding Xiao Yang trembled violently, and the earth cracked. The invisible sword idea released terrible pressure on Xiao Yang from all directions. Especially at the moment, Xiao Yang's diamond glass body can't avoid the suppression of the sword idea. Surrounded by the sword idea, Xiao Yang's body jumping up was also stopped in mid-air. Trying to break out of the siege was like going to heaven. Especially after the huge sword over Xiao Yang's head solidified, it was impossible for Xiao Yang to avoid Jianming's attack. Jianming, you have repeatedly challenged the bottom line of our pavilion master. It's true that no one in our union pavilion can fail. Luo Jin took a fierce step forward, and Zhongyi on one side followed closely. The momentum of the 2-star fighting emperor swept out of time and swept away towards the Jianming seat opposite. Seeing that Jianming showed the 6th sword seal, which was famous for closing people's retreat in his 7-sword decision, Luo Jin's face became dignified in an instant. At the same time, a group of raging anger also rose abruptly at the bottom of his heart. In a pair of dark eyes, scarlet flames almost wanted to spray out. At the moment, the power of Jianming's sword is obviously more than 20% of his own strength. Seeing Xiao Yang's strength against the sky, Jianming obviously doesn't intend to let Xiao Yang leave alive. He wants to suffer forever. Once Xiao Yang doesn't die, it will become a big problem for the 4 families in the future. Even for their long term, Jianming believes that the 3 Chen arrays behind him will never sit idly by. Jie, the pavilion leader has come to this. Do you still expect to use your background to suppress my 4 sects? Today, if the person behind you is here, the 4 of us really don't dare to move Xiao Yang's finger, but it's a pity. Jianming sneered in a grim tone. At the same time, the fighting spirit in her body surged rapidly. On the 4 giant swords that blocked Xiao Yang, there was also a great light. A mighty pressure spread from it, suppressing Xiao Yang in the narrow space. Pavilion leader, we didn't want to be enemies with you. As long as you don't interfere in this matter today, when the 4 of us solve Xiao Yang, we will leave. But if you have to hold the sign of Union Pavilion against us, don't blame us and you for breaking the net. Chen Zhen faces Luo Jin coldly, steps lightly, and the faint pressure spreads out, which resists Zhongyi's momentum and pressure. At the same time, the invisible pressure turns into a circle to surround Zhongyi and Luo Jin. In this way, any small move of the 2 of them will fall into Chen Zhen's eyes. Just like what Jianming thought, although Xiao Yang's strength is not enough to resist them, his age is here after all. Coupled with his strength far better than his own cultivation, Chen Array will not doubt that if Xiao Yang is allowed to continue to grow, I'm afraid that even if the 4 of them work together, they will not be his opponent again over time. There is not much they can do to stifle all threatening possibilities in the cradle. On the other side, at the moment when the sound of drinking fell from Jianming's mouth, the huge sword over Xiao Yang's head also burst out a dazzling white light at this moment, making everyone present unable to open their eyes. Sword seal. At this moment, the golden giant sword with dazzling white light also fell like a meteorite falling from the sky. Xiao Yang, who was surrounded by walls, could not avoid this terrible blow. Once the sword really fell on him, he would die today, but at the same time, Xiao Yang felt powerless in his heart. Jianming's attack showed his real strength. In the face of the attack of the 8-star Dipper Emperor, Xiao Yang's strength can't resist it at all. Therefore, if there is no accident, Xiao Yang is afraid to die in Jianming's hands today. I can't manage so much. No matter what happens today, I must stop these 4 madmen first. Anyway, I want Xiao Yang to live. Seeing that Xiao Yang was in danger, Luo Jin finally couldn't stand it anymore. With a big hand, the Tai astrolabe that was on the verge of breaking appeared in Luo Jin's hands again. All the fighting spirit in his body poured into the Tai astrolabe in his hands at this moment. The milky light quickly poured out of the astrolabe and turned into milky white light bands. He rushed towards Chen Array with great momentum. At the same time, Zhongyi on one side was also dancing quickly with a dignified old face. Cumbersome printing formulas were quickly sacrificed, and a breath of ancient vicissitudes quickly condensed in his hands. Aware of the breath between Zhongyi's palms, even Wu Jitian and Yi Luotian, who have been sitting and watching the diversity, can't help turning their eyes. It's obvious that even though they are high-level fighting emperors, they are still somewhat moved by Zhongyi's fighting skills at the moment. Spirit-level fighting skill. Wu Jitian's eyes flickered slightly and said in a deep voice. This fighting skill, I'm afraid it's put in the spirit-level fighting skill, which is also a very good existence. Chen Zhen's old eyes are empty and narrow. Even they don't have this fighting skill, but they can't imagine that it will appear on an ordinary elder of Union Pavilion. This is also invisible. It explains the power of Union Pavilion to them. Silent palm. In the face of the surprise of these people, Zhongyi ignored it. While the violent cry fell from his mouth, in the void above his head, a black Lingtian giant palm also appeared in time. As soon as he appeared, he blasted Chen Array with an incomparably vast Lingtian momentum. But even so, Chen Zhen's face was still calm. Although the fighting skills of the spirit level were powerful, the strength gap between Zhongyi and him could not be easily made up by only one fighting skill. The fighting emperor was no better than the half-emperor. At this level, only with truly powerful power can he dominate the battlefield. Hehe, Zhongyi, I really envy you. As a 2-star fighting emperor, you can have the spirit-level fighting skills. It's a pity. Although the fighting skills are good, you can't give full play to its real power in your hands. He stared at the painted black Ling Tian's huge palm with envy, but Chen Zhen smiled slowly. Of course, what surprises me most is that since you have demonstrated this fighting skill, you can't imagine that you will point it at me. Don't you know that my defense is the strongest among the 4 of us? Today, I'll let you see the means of the 5th order array mage. With the cold laughter falling, Chen Zhen's heart moved. Suddenly, a vast and terrible soul force quickly surged out of his eyebrows and quickly condensed a mysterious array at the feet of Zhongyi and Luo Jin. No. Get back. Seeing this, Luo Jin's pale face suddenly changed dramatically. Although he responded in time, it was too late. When Luo Jin spoke out, the mysterious golden array had been condensed. A golden light column with a diameter of 1 meter rose from the ground in the big array and surrounded them. 9 days Thunder Prison Array, Qi. Thunder Prison Array, Purgatory Side. Today's war, not only Xiao Yang, but also Luo Jin will die. This video will end here.